We can begin. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the number 4 Philosophy Wednesdays. I don't even believe it myself that I've been doing this for 4 times in a row, but here we are. So please ping your friends who are interested, and let's go. Let's start. We've been talking about knowledge. We've been kind of touching in and out of it, like we've been kind of flirting with it. So today we're going to begin to, before we tackle scientific knowledge, we will talk about knowledge in general and what it means, etc., and what it entails, and yeah, that is what we will be doing. So. Quick reminder before, if you remember the slide from the very first episode when we kind of counted the 5 branches of philosophy. So can you remember them? Anybody? Or at least name one.
Epistemology, phenomenology.
Oh, well, that's the one I was going to take.
Go ahead.
No, I just started. I was kidding, but that was what I was going to say.
You were going to say epistemology, John?
But yeah, so now I have to remember another one, and it should be easy for me. Let's see. Oh shoot, I know this.
Epistemology, logic, aesthetic, phenomenology.
Logic, of course.
Logic.
Logic comes first, and then?
Oh, the order actually is significant?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The order is my order. It's arbitrary.
Oh, okay. I was wondering if there's a structure to it. Okay, never mind.
What else do we ask questions about? How do we know? And then Aesthetics. Well, and how do you understand aesthetics, John? I'm curious.
Oh well, that one I mean I just remember because of the whole kind of Occam's razor thing like that.
Oh,
that
nice. Okay,
beauty and science.
Cool. Before aesthetics, there is ethics, right? And the last branch would be, yes, absolutely, metaphysics. Yes, we will be doing some metaphysics today, just a tiny bit. Okay, very good. Those are the 5 branches. Okay, here we are. So today, as expected, we would be talking about epistemology in particular, because we will be talking about the definition of knowledge and what does it mean, etc., etc. So again, this slide is a reminder. What is epistemology? It is the theory of knowledge. It is the art or the study of answering the following questions. What is knowledge? So how do we know? And what does it mean to know? And what are the mechanisms that we use to know? And the example we already took, you can take any silly example, what is water, what is whatever, how do we know it's good for us? If it applies to other people, does it automatically apply to me, etc., etc. So we already talked about that. If you need a reminder, just let me know, and I will do. I will leave you with this video from Richard Feynman. Richard Feynman gives this wonderful interview where he gives us, at the very beginning, his kind of understanding of, let's say, the problems of knowledge and how to tackle it. Go.
You take any crazy idea. I don't know, it's hard to make up a very crazy one thing, witches or something like that, and you tell about what people used to believe in witches, and of course nobody believes in witches now, and you think, how could they believe in witches? Then you turn around and you say, let's see, what witches do we believe in now? What ceremonies do we do? Every morning we brush our teeth. What is the evidence that the brushing the teeth does us any good in cavities? So you start wondering, are we all, imagine as the Earth turns on the orbit, there's an edge between light and dark. And along that edge, all the people along that edge were doing the same ritual for no good reason. Just like in the Middle Ages, they had other rituals. And you try to picture this perpetual line of toothbrushers going around the Earth. It's to take the world from another point of view. Now, it may well be that brushing teeth is a very good thing because it gets rid of cavities, and you can find out whether it does or it doesn't by trying to find out. Now, you can ask your dentist, and he says, of course. And you say, how about evidence? I have not found the evidence from dentists because they just learned it in school. Now, I'm not trying to argue that it's good or bad to brush teeth. What I'm trying to argue for is to think about things from a new point of view.
So he's asking the question, how do we know that we can really brush our teeth? And how do we know that it really works? And of course, none of us has checked the evidence for that at all, nothing whatsoever. But we still do it. And at the same time, we make fun of people who believe in magic and witches. And he's saying it's the same exact thing. Once you don't have the evidence, once you haven't checked for the evidence, then you are just a magician or a believer in magic or something like that. That's all you're doing. So it's a silly ritual for him, this brushing your teeth. He says explicitly, I'm not advocating for brushing your teeth or not. He's just saying that if you do, then you should be aware of the evidence. You should be aware of why you're doing it, at least. Okay. So what is the real problem here? The real problem is we don't know what to trust. Do we trust ourselves? Do we trust other people? Do we trust our senses? And this is creating big problems in our fundamental definitions of knowledge and of information and of all that stuff, which we will get to in a minute. Another gentleman thinking about it is Frenchman René Descartes on slide 5. René Descartes famously wrote two big manuscripts called Meditation 1 and Meditations 2. And in his meditations, he imagined a worst case scenario, right? Where there is a demon, and this demon is fooling everybody. This demon is generating false information. This demon is, just tricking you because this demon has magic powers, okay? So this is a direct quote from him. He writes, "Now, how do I know that he," meaning the demon, "has not brought it about that there is no earth at all, no heavens, no extended things, no shape, no magnitude, no place." So all of these things are, hallucinations generated by this demon. "And yet that all these things appear to me to exist just as they do now, or even whenever I add 2 and 3, or count the sides of a square, or make a judgment about something even simpler, if anything simpler can be imagined." We read some other paragraph of the same manuscript when we talked about the philosophy of mathematics, because he has this view that 2 + 3 = 5 is supposed to be the most simple thing on the, you can imagine, the most simple piece of knowledge you can intuit. And so this is the born of the school of skepticism. He's skeptic about everything. He's like, how do I know? If I can be fooled magically like that, can I access, anything, any piece of knowledge? And he reaches a conclusion, famously, where he screams "cogito ergo sum" in Latin, which means I think, therefore I am, which is often misunderstood by people because they don't know the backstory. So people say, oh, but this is the importance of thinking, like you should think to so that you are a philosopher, etc. That's not really what he's talking about. What he's talking about is the only thing that you're absolutely sure of is that you are experiencing something. This fundamental fact about you, which is that you are experiencing something, whether that something is true or not, it matters very little. What really matters is we are sure that you have an experience, some experience. And that is what he builds his entire, let's say, epistemology on it. Okay? This is where he is absolutely sure of. He's absolutely sure of experience. Now, modern psychologists, they kind of hate this, simply because it's even worse. Now we know that this I that he speaks about is also elusive. Who is I? Who is the person? The personality? And we don't even know that this I is the same when it says I think and then therefore I am. And since this is the problem, then this I am has a big question mark. The only thing we are really sure of is thinking here. Some thinking is happening. But not to dwell on this a lot. This is where he gets with his skepticism. So he ends up building all of this knowledge system, if we want to call it, on the mind. Of course, he takes it to a different place where he tries to prove the existence of God, etc. But this is what we have. So we can agree, all of us, that building upon our experience of the world is the most sure we can be of anything, if that is a valid statement to say. All right. Very quickly. So let's dive into it. We've all used these words before. So let's try to define them. What do you think the difference is between data, on slide 7, data and information and knowledge? Let's go.
Well, so I first of all, they look to me like they're ordered in a hierarchy. Data's kind of primitive, information's a little less primitive, and knowledge is the least primitive of all.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, you can, but we haven't defined these terms yet. So yeah, if this is what you want, I'll go with you. But let's try to make it a little bit more exact, if you can.
So data is kind of pure, read. It's the kinds of things I like to talk about. Just the reading of a meter. A meter points to the number 3. That's data. I have no idea. The interpretation of that data is completely down the road. It's just a thing that we observe. It's a directly observed fact, and you can somehow communicate that directly observed fact. How about that for data?
Andre in chat says this is raw. Do you agree, John? Like, this is raw, let's say, material, he says.
I was going to add that data can contain information, but it doesn't necessarily contain information. Like, it could be random.
Okay, so it can contain, but sometimes it cannot. This is what this is your.
Or it can contain both. You can have noise and you can have information.
So let me draw this difference.
If it were perfectly compacted, if it were perfectly compressed, it would be all information. But that would be rare.
So you don't agree with John's hierarchy here? I'm not sure if I understood correctly.
I don't think I was inconsistent with John.
I'm not, but sure. The way I understood it is that he thinks data is the most primitive. Am I right? I'm not sure anymore. But anyway,
I would agree with that. But I would say that maybe there could be another category of noise, even more primitive than data. I'm not sure about that. But yeah, so it would be more. I mean, data would be the largest circle, right? And a subset of the data would be information. And I'm not sure how knowledge would be something about us.
Okay. Let me put a question mark here on knowledge. And can you? Okay, so information could be data is a big circle, and information is inside it. Can you tell me, how do I look at information and know that it is information and not just data? Is there a criteria you can use somewhere?
Some processing? Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm not really. I think that's a hard question. Yeah, I mean, on some level, when you can't compress it anymore, I'm thinking from like a programming point of view.
So you want it for you it has to be as concise as possible. So being concise is kind of this this property that would let you know.
Yeah, that's my feeling. I'm not sure that's very rigorous, but.
All right.
I'll
write it
there.
Let's hear from Andre a second, and then we'll come.
Experience, there's a much more fundamental difference. Experience is not knowledge. And so organization of the experience might be constituted as knowledge, but it's not a necessary prerequisite, in my opinion. I put a couple of things in the chat in terms of how I would divide data, information, and knowledge. And it has to do with, in terms of information, I would say it's a purpose is added to it. So it's, there's a certain vector that is pointing towards some kind of utility, and knowledge is grasping it to the fullest extent and understanding that utility.
So knowledge is higher on the scale for you. Knowledge is the highest form of, okay. And then you go from data to information, And what happens? How can I tell them apart?
You inject purpose in there for some sort of utility. So
Purpose. Okay.
you have a data sample, for example, right? You have all this raw data. Then you sort of isolate what type of data is, important for your purpose, right, or for some goal that you're seeking for. That then it becomes information, and then once you study it, you understand the interconnections between the data points. Then it becomes knowledge, and you can use it and reproduce it.
Nice. John Mallinckrodt John gave you the thumbs up. Yes, of course.
And can I just, I think I would say, because I was just thinking of this as Andre was talking, and I think it's a kind of a perfect illustration, but you tell me, my meter reading, right? I look at a meter and it points to 3. And then I kind of add that to some kind of understanding that the meter is an ammeter and that it's reading in milliamps. So I say, okay, there's 3 milliamps of current flowing in that wire. That's information that I gain by kind of putting the meter reading and some other data, maybe at some level about what it is together. And then after doing that kind of thing for a while and understanding how the meter reading changes when I do other external things, I start to gain some knowledge about electricity, not just the fact that there's 3 milliamps of current in that wire, but why there is, maybe, ideas about how that came.
You're describing metadata, I think.
You mean metadata in the sense of what the ammeter is?
Like knowledge of the context. So if you have a number, you don't know what that number represents until somebody gives you the units or the physical phenomena that's associated with it or something like that. And that's
I'll put metadata in between, okay, and then you can you give us a definition, Hero? Metadata, what that is? What is that? You know what? I think it would be easier for us if we take an example. I like the electricity one, but let's even go simpler, John. Let's do the weather. So if I'm gathering data or metadata or information or knowledge about the weather, can you think of the 4 distinctions, let's say, and then Andy, if you can just tell us what metadata is before we continue.
Well, I like the weather example, but I was thinking of maps. Like the legend on a map is metadata, right? It's telling you what it's telling you what all the data on the map symbolizes. Actually,
it's data about the data.
Yeah, in its most generic form. It's literally like capital M metadata is like a GIS concept that's used in mapping a lot. But it's applicable to, I think, any data. You have to have some metadata. You have to have some context to make sense of it. So like with weather, when you said weather, I was just thinking like, yeah, temperature, you can say degrees. That doesn't, you can be wildly off if you have the wrong metadata though. If you think you're working in Fahrenheit and you're actually working in Celsius.
Can I take a shot at defining knowledge?
Sure.
So I think fundamentally, at the lowest level, knowledge is the ability to convert qualia into a prediction that helps an agent guide its behaviors for better survival. Now, an example of this would be a light sensor.
Survival is the main motivation here.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a hot take. Okay, but can you come back, because we haven't explained what qualia is? Can you explain to people here listening to us what do you mean by qualia, and then how does it imply predictions? Yes, go ahead.
So if we take a salp, which is a kind of a jellyfish-like thing that has very limited qualia. Let's say, for example, it can detect that there is light, and it can detect that light is in like a general direction. Like there is light in front of it, or there is more light in front of it than there is behind it, something like this. It has a primitive eye that can just sense that there is more light or less light. Consequently, it can choose to swim towards the light. And as a point of that agent using that light, it's making a prediction that there is more opportunity for survival where the light is than where the light is not. And so that's just a primitive example of knowledge as a consequence not only of quality, of detection, but being able to make a prediction about moving towards the light or away from the light. Some animals, like cockroaches, move away from the light because that's indicated for their survival. But you have to make a prediction in order to have knowledge, and that prediction has to be valuable in a evolutionary sense. That would be my minimum requirements for knowledge.
So for you, only living beings can have knowledge, because not living beings don't have that motivation to survive, and then so something like a book, for example, doesn't have knowledge. We have knowledge because we are reading the book. Am I following?
That's consistent with my definition. I'll keep it. Yes.
Cool. Andre, you had something to say as well?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly maybe clarify just one thing. So with qualia, I agree with Benjamin that it is a sort of raw data that one would experience. But I think it's one of the types of data that is available to us. So qualia is definitely a very good example of raw data that is just getting streamed at us. But it is just one of the different ways of acquiring data, or perceiving data. Not necessarily just the quality of the experience itself, but the experiences themselves as well.
Can Andrew demonstrate this with an example? Because I don't see it.
Let's see. So the the Mary room experiment, I think it sort of gives you several examples of that. So qualia is one of them. It's just trying to say that qualia, the experience of a thing, the qualitative experience, subjective experience of a thing, is necessary to gain any knowledge. But then it kind of juxtaposes it with other types of data, like just information coming from a book, or data coming from a book, data coming from maybe some sort of psychological states of the mind as they experiencing something that is read. So there are other types and forms of data points that are fed into the system. And then I think the if I remember it correctly, the point of the experiment is to say that qualia is necessary to gain the actual knowledge of the redness. So only experiencing it, but there are pushbacks against that, obviously. And I think the very fact that it presents different types or kinds of data gives it away a little bit.
I mean, I just got the feeling that Andre is describing reading a book as not qualia. And I just don't understand how reading is not qualia.
Well, I mean, I think it's almost diametrically opposing to qualia, because qualia is experiencing the apple that is red. It's not just reading about what redness represented in terms of phenomena, like in scientific terms. Although
So
that
it has a subjective element.
Yeah,
It has a
and
It's always presented as like what it's like to be, or like what it's like to experience a thing, as opposed to the thing itself.
But
And it's that, well, isn't the Mary room, or the Mary in the room experience? Isn't that idea that like you can know everything about a thing? You can sort of pretend like we can know everything about a thing, like everything about red, color red, but the idea is, if you've never actually experienced that, and when you actually do experience it, the idea that you're not learning anything new is kind of absurd. Like certainly if you've learned everything scientifically or whatever about historically and culturally about the color red, but you've never experienced it, certainly when you finally experience it, you are still you're learning a new thing. So therefore that must be like a thing in itself. But I don't know, I have always found that idea of qualia to be a little bit silly, but I'm not sure.
well. Sorry.
So just very quickly, Hero, I mean, that's fair. Although you can even yourself experience something like this. Like you read about Rome, let's say, right? And you look at the pictures about Rome and history, and you're very excited about it. And you have this grand vision in your mind of what Rome is like. But then it is quite different from when you actually enter Rome and look at it yourself, and there's some sort of insights. The idea is that you're finding some insights when you're experiencing something. Now, I'm not saying that I believe that train of thought, and there's not good pushes against that, but
Oh, I 100% agree. I do think Mary would learn something new when she finally experiences red. I think the idea that anybody would have ever thought they knew everything about red without experiencing it is absurd. Like no scientist thinks that they know everything about a thing without experiencing it itself. No historian. Like it's also true that you can live in Rome your whole life and not know something that a historian would know about Rome. So it seems to go both ways. I just think that idea that
precisely, yeah.
yeah.
Well, let me kind of mishmash all those ideas into what is a little bit more of a formal definition, and we will see where the real problem is that we were talking about for like 10 minutes now. There is something hidden in these things. So, data or data, if you prefer, is raw. It's unprocessed facts, figures without any context or interpretation. So, if I'm collecting data about the weather, it'll be, let's say, Monday, 23 degrees. If I'm measuring, let's say, the temperature, and then there will be another number. Let's say it's about the atmospheric pressure or whatever. So it just be raw pieces of facts that or detections of state of affairs in the world. Information, which we all kind of also agreed upon after 2 minutes of discussion. It was easy for us to say, oh, if data is unprocessed, then information is the processing or the organization of this data. So once I have, I love that idea about a purpose, right? So you can get all the data you have, and then for it to be useful, it has to be organized in a certain manner. And it depends on your purpose behind the research to organize it in one way or another. So this is what information is. Any objections on these two definitions before we move to the big problem? I think we can all agree on these two. And then the real problem is knowledge. We want to say knowledge is the application and the interpretation of that information. We want to say that it's the understanding, it's the deep ownership of the concept, or the deep kind of connections that you reveal as you understand something. You know it very well, right? We spoke a little bit about survival. We will see about that, whether that is really something that pushes you to know more. And we've seen something of a human factor here as well. I'm not sure. There's a big problem here. This is not easy to define. Okay, and we will see exactly how difficult this is. Okay.
Okay.
Classically, there was a definition proposed by Socrates - Plato in his dialogues, specifically into Meno the slave and Theaetetus the mathematician. If you haven't read these dialogues, they're wonderful. It's a cute thing. The language is a little bit wishy-washy, but it's a cute piece of literature. Both of those, and in those kind of Plato - Socrates, because Socrates never wrote anything, so I keep coming back to Plato. He kind of puts this definition of knowledge. So he kind of proposes that after some discussion, he says, "Oh, it's a justified true belief," which philosophers and logicians and all the people who came after started referring to it as the tripartite from the number 3. So it has 3 elements. What we mean is that if a subject S knows something, a proposition P, we mean that number 1, P has to be true. Number 2, S, the subject, has to believe P. And number 3, S is justified in believing P. So you cannot say only, you cannot know something that is false. You cannot claim that you know something without believing it. And you cannot just believe things and say that you know them. No, you need to have some justification for this. And there's an example on the slide as well. It could be anything, right? I know it is raining. It means that it is actually raining. And it means that I believe it. And it means as well that I have reasons to believe that it is actually raining. For example, I look outside and I see that it is raining. Okay, so this is what we call the tripartite, and it was very popular. It is a misconception, if you've heard about this before, it is a misconception that it was uncontested for the entirety of history. Socrates himself, in the same dialogue, kind of gives the impression that he doesn't really, let's say, not believe it, but he doesn't really think very big deal out of that. He doesn't negate it per se. It's very wishy-washy. And then in the middle of the discussion, he says he has to go to attend his trial. So we don't really hear the rest of what happened. Many medieval historians, medieval philosophers, I want to say, they kind of criticized this definition, and they discovered plenty of holes in it. But it was only made famous in the 20th century, in the beginning of the 20th century, where people started referring to it, and people kind of spread it, and it was widely accepted until a man called Edmund Gettier came and discovered a big problem in this. Is there any question before I disclose the problem?
Yeah, I wanted to just bring up, because I'm constantly bringing this back to my own kind of, really naive philosophy of science, which I like, which involves only directly observed facts and theories. And I'm thinking about this justified, especially the truth part. I would say that you can only know that something can only be true if it falls into the directly observed fact category. A theory can never fall into that category. So you cannot have a justified true belief about a theory. You can have justified true beliefs about things like the shape of the earth and other things that are directly observed facts, but not about general relativity or Newtonian mechanics or something. I don't know if that helps at all, if you object to
Sounds like
that, but
progress. Sounds like progress, John. Keep going.
Let's not do the quantum mechanics bit here. So, John, even those theories that you talk about, which cannot be taken as a whole, as observed fact, and there's a big question mark there, but let's go on. Even those theories have observable entailments. Would you agree?
right, I do agree with that. Yep.
Yeah. So whenever you want to claim that you know, yeah.
Let's put it this way: they have entailments within the theory, right? I know for sure that space-time is curved in relativity. That's an entailment of relativity.
You accept this as fact. You accept this as a piece of knowledge, right? You say, I know that.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We're cool. We're fine. That sounds like a justification enough for me, right? So,
but I don't
that
know,
could be
but I
true.
can't. But to say that general relativity is true, we can never know that. So you can't have a justified true belief about relativity, being true, or about relativity, I guess.
So your stance is, to begin with,
True
you can never access the truth. Okay. So you've uncovered, you've uncovered already a big problem, which is, what if we can never access the truth, or this truth is always polluted by whatever we have as package? So
that's right, and yet I'm still willing, and this is really, I think, the nub of the naivete of my model, in that I really do think that there are things that are directly observed facts that are absolutely true, and Rene Descartes can go to hell if he disagrees with me.
Oh no, he will agree with you, and then he agrees that he will see God later on. But that piece of skepticism is what made him famous, not his conclusions afterwards. This is the problem that Gettier and others have along history they have discovered. He wrote just a 3-page essay, called "Is Justified True Belief Knowledge?" And he gives the example after which it's a template, right? You can generate like 1 million cases out of it. This is his example, one of the 2 examples he gives in the essay. So he says, imagine 2 people, Alice and Bob, and then they're both applying for a job, right? And Alice was told in secret by the employer that Bob will get the job. Okay. Alice goes, asks Bob, and it turns out that he has 10 coins in his pocket. How are you? What are you doing, etc. What do you have in your pocket? He says 10 coins. And then she says, the statement highlighted in the slide 11, I know that the person who will get the job has 10 coins. That's what she says. And so let's examine it. Is it true? Yes. Is it justified? Yes, of course. Does she believe it? Absolutely. So this kind of falls under the textbook category of what should be very valid, very correct, very 100% knowledge, right? So it was justified, and her initial justification, her main justification, is the hiring manager, and that in such a situation, he's an authority. So in such a situation, his word can be taken as valid justification. However, what happened is that instead of Bob, Alice got the job because Bob messed up his interview. And after checking, turns out that she also has 10 coins in her pocket, unbeknownst to her. She had no idea before checking. And so now, can we still say that she knew that the person who will get the job has 10 coins? Kind of happened by accident, kind of happened by chance. That's not knowledge. That's not what we accept to be as knowledge, something that you kind of utter by the chance. She had good reasons before, but it turns out that her justification was wrong, and it was just a lucky shot that she had 10 coins in her pocket and she got the job. It was absolutely lucky that Bob messed up. Still, her statement falls under the category of justified true belief, and we don't want that to happen. So that was a major shock. That was a major problem that he discovered, Gettier, when he wrote this. Bertrand Russell wrote another example. Another example of this is some story by Indian philosopher Dharmatara, or Dharmotara. I messed up the vowels. Dharmotara, he was born very much earlier than this. We're talking early 8th century, right? Or let's say late 8th, early 9th century. He says, he gives this example. There's a man who is walking in the desert, and then he sees a mirage somewhere, but unbeknownst to him, he doesn't know, he has no idea. And then he says, oh, there's water over there. But then he goes over there, and turns out there wasn't water where he pointed. There was water at a close by location, let's say behind the dune or behind the hill or whatever, that he couldn't see before. So again, when he says, I know that there's water over there, his claim was justified by whatever justification was available to him. His senses are great in this situation, should be reliable. But then again, we discover later on that it was only true by chance, by luck. If there wasn't water in another location close by, his claim would never have been true, because the location he pointed to was wrong. It wasn't the case. Just saying, oh, there's water over there, right, doesn't cut it. Okay, so these are two textbook cases. You can have fun generating more problems with this. Is the problem with the definition that Plato gives clear?
I have a question about the Gettier case.
Sure.
So there was a point at which Bob was going to get the job. She'd been told that he was going to get the job, and she asked him if he had 10 coins, and he did. And so she said that is it not unreasonable to say that it was a justified true belief? Bob messed up. Well, and I guess, so there's one question. And then the other question is it, certainly it can't be the case that a justified true belief can't turn out to be wrong, or can it? Is that, if something turns out to be wrong, was it never a justified true belief?
Well, here's the problem.
It was never true.
That's exactly the problem. So the problem is that this definition that Plato gives either has a problem on the truth level, or a problem on the justification level, or a problem on the belief level. So he gave us three conditions. You have to believe it, it has to be true, and you have to have justification to believe it. Now, when Alice says, "Oh, I know that the person who will get the job has 10 coins," and then it turns out that she got the job and she has 10 coins, she did not base that on what we will call later a valid justification, and then it turned out to be not true to begin with. And then, if you're going to base your knowledge definition on that, then you will have infinitely many problems as you go along, because you will always discover something new, and there's always a possibility that this thing fails.
So
Is it better?
you want a justified true belief to be defined in such a way that it can't turn out to be wrong.
Because again, we will discuss later. Is it the next slide? Yes, exactly. So again, why am I including? If you follow me on slide 13, why am I including the truth condition? Because I don't think we want to accept that you can know something that is not true. Like why would I know and then you would I know that this statement is false. That's a true statement. The truth value of that, you are affirming that you know 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's not play that semantic game of.
So as we get into the nuance here, I think it's helpful to think of a justified true statement as being one for which there is no better representation. It can't be improved. It can't be made more true. Now, she could have said, for example, I have heard the hiring manager say things that lead me to believe that the person who's going to be hired may have or claims to have 10 coins in their pocket. That's a truer expression, right? And because a truer expression exists, then the other version that is less true is not a justified true expression.
There's plenty of people here who have problems. Go ahead, guys.
No, but this is very interesting because this is one of the very rare moments when I actually absolutely agree with Benjamin, because what he just did, he put the context, he filled that statement with context. Now we commonly in just for practical reasons we use shorthand. So that is actually what she is saying by making the statement or that proposition. However, it is taken on the at face value as being something highly absolutist in its nature, which it is not. We make approximations, which are, for the reasons of communication, are made to sound as if they were absolutist statements. So that's one of the, like Benjamin just kind of illustrated one of the pushes against the Gettier. There's also like the ultimate defeater that is commonly used. Like having only limited amount of information and knowledge does not justify her making the statement. However, if we can, perceive an occurrence where the knowledge is actually revealed to her, then the statement, in fact, would be justified.
But let me just add one more thing here. If your problem is with being limited with information, then this is always the case, right? We're always limited by our information. So how are we going to fix this? Under this kind of paradigm here, knowledge can never happen.
And you would be
Part of
right.
what's
Like,
interesting about this.
Under that definition, it's you.
No, I
right.
disagree. My SALP, for example, has this knowledge that going towards light means he gets more food because his food is autotrophs, right? Protozoa that eat light. So he needs to go where the light is in order to get the food. Now, the fact that it could be a flashlight, it could be a sub that's going down and making a light at a depth at which there is no autotrophs, for example. The fact that he could be wrong doesn't mean that there isn't a positive survival benefit towards moving towards light that has predictive value, at least based on the past experience, which is his knowledge. Now
I will get to the I will get to the predictive value in just a minute. It's one of the possible fixes. I'm going to get to it, but just looking at the
by survival, because the SALP that get this wrong don't survive. The SALP that get it right survive.
We don't really know that. Some of them will not. Most of them will not survive, and that's good enough for evolution. So we're going to talk about it in a minute, but survival on its own, I know it's a good idea. It's just if you're proposing it as a fix for this, we will discover in a minute later that it also has holes. What I really want to make sure before we diverge here, do we all agree, do we all understand, first of all, that this tripartite theory that Plato has proposed has many holes, and one of the holes is you can know something by chance, and we don't want that to happen. Is that clear with everybody before we get into the entangled in discussion here?
Can you
Are you just talking about
can you
Gettier
restate that?
cases? I'm sorry.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
you know it by chance, then it has no predictive value. It's my definition.
So are you just like doing an analysis of JTB and what JTB is or JRB
This
is?
This room is about the definition of knowledge. Exactly. If you click on the link above or in the link in the chat, you can see our slides. We are on slide 13 at the moment. Who had something to say? Hero, you were speaking and we interrupted.
I guess I'm struck by the fact that even if what she was told by the hiring manager was true, so she, and it turned out, and that Bob was going to get hired, and it wasn't depending on whether he botched the interview or not. So if everything played out, if all her knowledge was intact, she knew something true. She had knowledge, yet what she told Bob was zero information. Like it wouldn't have helped him at all. He wouldn't have known anything. It wasn't what was information and knowledge to her was not information to him. And it's kind of like the Benjamin's example of searching for food under the light. Like it could actually be true that there's less food under the. It's like looking for your keys under the lamppost. It's like, well, did you lose the keys there? Well, no, but I can't. This is where I can see. So even if there's less food, the fact that you can see it, you have a higher chance of getting that food. The information could be wrong in one context, but still helpful in another.
How is that relevant to? Are you just talking about the causal reference theories that are supposed to solve Gettier problems? Like what are you talking about as relevant to the Gettier cases and the JTB analysis?
We're talking about
we just
knowledge.
proposed we just proposed the JTB if you're just joining, and we're discovering what's wrong with it, and we just gave the couple of Gettier cases, and we're trying to discuss what's wrong and how can we fix it later on. Okay, so the number one problem that the room has found is that truth condition, so P has to be true. It's causing problems because sometimes that statement could turn out to be true, but then by chance. So the justification is wrong, or it could never happen, just like the case with Alice. She didn't get hired, but then her statement saying the person with 10 coins kind of happened. So it was kind of true. The problem was with the reference to what person. It turned out that the word person in her head meant Bob, but then in reality it meant her. The statement itself doesn't detail a lot, and then people are kind of proposing that let's add more context as a solution. This is where we are.
And isn't it? Ultimately, I think you already said this. You're going to do the predictive thing, but I'm just struck by the fact that the difference, of course, is ultimately you could just say, well, you can never know that something's true if it's proposed to happen in the future until it happens. Once again, the only things that can possibly be true are directly observed facts, and you can't directly observe a fact in the future.
That's a very good point. That is a very good point. But then there's another problem that also the past is not also that so much established. If you want to rely on your past experience from memory, that's also questionable. If you want to rely on videotape, that's a little bit better. But at the same time,
but it's a different kind. You can go there too, but future's easy to rule out, right? It can't possibly
absolutely,
be true if it hasn't happened yet.
Absolutely.
But no, I think this is an important point. Justified true belief. Belief is another word for a prediction. And I don't think it's meaningful to have beliefs about the past. I think it's only meaningful to have beliefs about what will happen.
Well, I think you can have beliefs about the past too.
I agree with John, actually.
Yeah. And I think, and it gets to me, because I totally agree with you, Shamash. One of the things that I rail against all the time is people saying things like, I know this or that, when you can't
But a
possibly.
belief,
Well, they say Donald Trump believes something. You don't
but
know
a
what
belief
Donald
about
Trump
the
believes.
past, a belief about the past is itself a prediction about the future. In other words, if you believe that somebody buried a gold coin in your backyard, you're basically believing that if you dig up your yard, you will find a gold coin. This belief about the past can be a prediction about the future.
Let me ask the room this question. If I tossed a coin and I never checked whether it is heads or tails, can I say, I know that it is blah, blah, blah? And can I necessarily say, I know that it is heads or tails? Can I do that, or do I have to check?
I think the second statement is okay for me.
The second statement is okay. So if I say, if I know that it is heads or tails, everybody agrees with that. Right? No problems here, because I'm counting all the possibilities, right? Because there is a position that says, no, you cannot. So I got that people here, it's heads or tails, even when you don't check. People accept this. But then this kind of implies that truth is independent of you and your observing and of your testing and of your observation.
How does it do that? It has nothing to do with truth. You're asking about knowledge.
I'll say it again. I'm tossing a coin, and I'm not going to look for the what is it, whether it's heads or tails. I'm going to turn around and I'm going to say, I know for a fact that it is heads or tails. And everybody agreed. Now, if you agree, you are accepting that the truth about whether it is heads or tails is independent of your observation. It will always be something without you checking whatsoever. Well, that is a position that is called truth is metaphysical. This is a conception of truth that is metaphysical in the sense that it does not depend on you observing reality all the time. Okay, so people distinguish between epistemological truth and metaphysical truth. Metaphysical truth, in short, is it could be true, it will happen. There is a state of affair that is knowable without me go looking for it, and without me observing it, without me testing for it, without me justifying for it, right? And epistemological understanding of truth says I can only access that knowledge after I test for it.
Yeah, and it's a very different thing. I mean, once again, I think Newtonian mechanics is incredibly, it's probably like one of the most useful tools we have in science, because it allows us to make lots of predictions that will turn out to be absolutely true, because those predictions are couched with uncertainties, and we know how to estimate uncertainties, etc. And so we can use it to make true statements. It doesn't change the fact that the theory itself is not true. It's based on foundational ideas that are wrong.
But I think you can have boundary conditions, right, around a particular theory and not extend its application beyond what it's relevant for, and still assent to the idea that it's true relative to that state of affairs, right? It's only when you stretch it out to be true in the broadest sense possible, right? Like the ultimate description of everything, that you, let's just say, may say it's wrong with regards to. But I mean, we don't do that with all of our theories. We have domains for reasons, right? We say that this theory is a biological theory of XYZ because we relegate it to the domain of biology, versus saying something like this is an epistemological theory. We don't extend that to, let's just say, metaphysics potentially, because we appropriately keep these bounds there because we know that there's a limitation to what it's let's say properly applicable to. And I think that's okay. I think it's still truth preserving in a relevant sense.
But then the problem is, how would you know the limits of a theory if you're limiting what with the sensitivity of your input? If I understand correctly, so you're saying, I'm gonna count it as accurate if it is within, let's say, 2 seconds error or 1 meter error or whatever. If you do that, and then let's say something falls out of that bound, you say, oh, this is an outlier, or you say, oh, we included, we now make the error wider. Let's make it 3 meters so that it accommodates for that as well. So this kind of makes it either a very fixed and then could be correct, could be false, or it makes it a very variable kind of error margin, which makes it useless.
Yeah, exactly. I think you're getting something that makes sense there, right? It depends on the type of theory that you're modeling, and it depends on the predictive capacity of that theory and what it extends to. Obviously, once you disconfirm a theory within a particular domain, you either have to make adjustments or modifications to the theory such that you can capture, let's just say, a particular idea. But even with Newtonian mechanics, right, we do say that it's not going to extend to like our quantum descriptions of the world, but nonetheless we find it useful within this arena. Now, if it becomes the case that within that very same arena it doesn't thoroughly meet our expectations with regards to what it predicts, then obviously we just make some adjustments there. But I think that's part of the scientific enterprise, right? Like we're constantly adjusting, modifying, and then seeing exactly what those boundary conditions are with regards to how our theories can apply successfully or so on and so forth.
Here's the problem with the classic definition of the justified true belief. This model of scientific thinking cannot exist because it keeps editing itself. And whenever we think of something to be true, we don't agree that this truth could be false with us not knowing. This is the problem here. And so what we're really highlighting is we need to get rid of this truth condition that is understood naively, like Plato and everyone else. I don't want to say everyone else. This problem was kind of discovered in the early Middle Ages. But this widely accepted view, let's say, that this truth is easily accessible and easily definable and eternal forever. I think that's a big problem that we can kind of to summarize whatever we were talking about for the last 10 minutes. Enough about the truth condition. Sorry, what?
Sure. No. I definitely respect what you're saying. I think that makes sense. There's something to be said about Gettier problems and their limitation. But I think when you speak about knowledge more broadly, I think Gettier problems are only limited to like propositional knowledge, right? There are other types of knowledge, like knowledge by acquaintance, and
we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there either today or in future episodes. So, what about belief? The belief condition, justified true belief. Very quickly, Amy is asked, just another example, she's asked 50 exam questions about Napoleon. And then before the exam, when we asked her, do you know anything about Napoleon? How do you feel that you're going to do in the test? She says the following statement: I do not know anything about Napoleon. I'm going to do very bad, right? But then, after we corrected her exam paper, she got 45 out of 50. So let P be the statement that Amy knows some information about Napoleon. And then we conclude that in this story, Amy does not believe P. She doesn't believe that she knows. But then it turns out that she actually knows. Do you agree that this is the case? And because for me, belief has to be conscious. You cannot believe something and then not know that you believe it. Knowing something and not knowing that you know it is kind of, let's say, tacit knowledge or subconscious or implicit or under that umbrella, right? We all have these reflexes that we do. If I throw a ball and you catch it, you're not necessarily, making that calculation or giving your hands the accurate order, consciously, but you can do it. So in this case, does the belief look like a necessary or sufficient or not necessary or not sufficient condition? It has a problem.
It appears that she doesn't have any knowledge of whoever you said. All she has is knowledge of the orthodoxy. Is knowledge of orthodoxy knowledge?
I'm not gonna confuse the orthodoxy with reality and then what Napoleon was really like. There's a book called Facts About Napoleon, and there's 50 of them.
Well,
and we gave it to this poor girl, and we told her we're gonna take an exam in it. Whether this is the orthodoxy
If
or
I
not the
could pass
orthodoxy
an,
is not a different question.
an exam about God, does that mean I have justified true beliefs about Zeus?
Sometimes I'm not arguing for it. I'm arguing against it. If you're a believer, firm believer in religion, I think people have loads of justifications. I think you know more than me the justifications that people give. I don't say I'm gonna believe them. I'm just saying it looks like it. And if you want to add this to the endless list of problems with this understanding, I'm with you.
I feel like we have a
Yeah,
problem that we reduce knowledge to a guy told me something, right? Like that's weird.
no, I think logic, all he was saying, I think all logic was saying was that if you happen to believe something by accident that's actually true, let's just say the belief condition hasn't been met. I think that's what you were saying, right? And I
Not
don't know
only
if you were going
that,
to describe it.
but even when it's not met, knowledge can happen. So this poor girl that's taking the exam, when we asked her, she's not lying. She said, "Well, I'm not really sure. I don't think I know a lot." And then she got way more than she expected, which means that she did not believe that she knows, but she actually knows. So knowledge, this belief condition, so the belief condition, what does it highlight? It highlights consciousness of the knowledge. It's not always necessary. That this is what the example is for. And if you wanna say, oh, sometimes it is present and it's not enough, I will agree, because we already saw the Gettier case when the belief and the justification were there and then it wasn't enough. I'm only taking them one by one just to show how naive the original understanding is, and how kind of complicated it actually is on the ground, because this is still a hot debate. I'm going to propose at the end, I hope that we don't take more time than this, a couple of other understandings of knowledge, or let's say improvements on the JTB, the justified true belief, and then we will discover as well that they're not enough. So it's not easy. I'm just trying to highlight the difficulty here.
So just really quickly, just for me to clarify. So you say the last example is to point out that awareness of the truthfulness of what you believe is not a necessary requirement for knowledge. Is that basically?
Just the awareness here. So here when she says I don't think I will do well in the test, or I don't know about Napoleon, she actually believes it. But
Yeah,
then after testing, it turns out that her belief about herself was already wrong.
Gotcha. So it's basically the saying that awareness is not required for knowledge to occur.
Yes, in some situations it's not. Yes, that's what I'm saying. I think we all would look at the test that has 45 over 50 on it, or even better, let's say 50 over 50. She can ace the test, and then say, oh, this girl really knows about Napoleon, until you ask her and she says, oh, I really don't. In which case you have a choice. Either you believe her or the evidence that you have in your hands. And I don't think we will. Yeah, John.
Was it a multiple choice test?
John, don't do this. Please don't do this.
No, actually, he has a point. No, it wasn't a multiple choice test. The very first research paper I wrote actually was about MCQs. Let's say, I don't know, 10 years ago now. Yeah. No, you have a point. Absolutely. It wasn't a multiple choice. Multiple choice tests are not reliable. So the third condition, also very quickly, the justification condition. And here we will spend some time, because this is kind of the more complicated place. Another quick distinction under the justification condition. So I'm on slide 15 if you're following. Another distinction that people make is between internalist versus externalist justification. What do we mean by that? What is it that I accept as an individual as valid justification? The internalists say, oh, hold up. If you accept that P is true and you accept it for such and such evidence, then this can only be accessed by you, and you are the ultimate judge of it. And this we see all around us. You see people believing in ghosts. You see people believing in UFOs. You see people believing in all sorts of religions, all sorts of gods, all sorts of other things like brushing your teeth, without really looking at the evidence very carefully. So there's an internal sort of comfort that we have to do some things and not other things. And we are the ultimate judge of our behavior and what we like to do. Therefore, a justification is understood and accepted and accessed internally. Now, that's a big problem for anybody who comes from a scientific background, Because from the scientific background, justification can only be accepted externally, i.e., using a certain process, a certain method that gives high ratio of true or false beliefs, i.e., reliability. Thank you very much. Everybody is happy now that mentioning reliability, we got to it. Okay. So when we have this high ratio of true to false beliefs that this process here is giving us, which you can call the scientific method, or you can call something else, whatever it is that you want to accept as a process, then this is something that comes from the outside. It's something that you probably learn about, or other people use it before you, because as you arrive to this earth, you don't have prior experience. And so if you believe it, or if you kind of adopt that process, or let's say, as Benjamin posits, it's something that is innate in us and comes from genetics, and you kind of behave in that way, or you die. Whichever one that is, this process will yield an advantage to you, will yield a ratio of true to false beliefs that is favorable to you. And that is an externalist kind of definition, whereas the internalist kind of acceptance of justification, whatever kind of suits me, and whatever kind of is accepted by whatever mood I happen to be. And it could change at any time. It doesn't have to stay consistent, whereas an externalist kind of understanding of justification has to kind of, over at least a measurable amount of time, significant amount of time, stay the same. It will not change. All right. So this is the difference between the two. And of course, whichever understanding you adapt, or you adopt, I should say. I say adapt now because of the evolution. Whichever understanding you adopt, there is a major problem. If you are an internalist, well, anything can be true, because whatever it is that you accept as a justification is justification. And that's just chaos and mayhem right there. And if you are an externalist, well, number one, if you are adopting someone else's method, then you are just submitting blindly. And if you are creating your own method and then adopting it, you're back to square one. You're back to internalist camp. Oh, I have a method, you see. I'm an external. I have a very reliable method that I made and tailored to be fine for me. Yeah, you're just deciding whatever works for you. Oh, I believe in Zeus the god, because every time I feel thirsty, I pray for him, and then I drink water, and I feel that my thirst has been quenched. And that is my method to know. That's kind of my internal method, right? That doesn't mean anything for anybody. And then if I start preaching it and other people believed it, would you still want to call it a valid justification if just a mass number of people believe it? I'm not comfortable with that. I want to say this is invalid, but how should I do it if it is understood by them and practiced by them? How can I just say, from within your system, I'm going to prove that you're wrong? I can't do that. And if I want to hold another theory and then compare it to theirs, that's kind of very difficult here. Is the point clear, or am I? Is it okay, this distinction between the two camps? All right. So the question: how do we fix it? The more important question: can we fix it? To begin with, one of the propositions is what people call reliabilist theory of knowledge. And reliabilist means we want a reliable method. So this kind of externalist justification school. Give me a reliable method and I will produce knowledge for you. So condition number one, P has to be true. Condition number two, S has to believe that P is true. Condition number three, S's belief that P was produced not by justification that they accept, but by a reliable cognitive process. And this method allows, for example, for this definition, allows for animals, for example, to possess knowledge. Because animals, they have that access to reliability, or whatever works, or repetition, or trial and error, whatever. But they can do it. And if you're willing to say, well, animals know, and the justification previously, people have problems say, well, what's a dog's justification? Probably it's not something conscious anyways that they have. We don't really know that. We don't really have access to that. But under this definition, it's very clear that they can know stuff. And this is fine, I think, by me at least. I think most people would accept that, let's say, dogs, they know their owners. They kind of recognize them. And the way they did it is by repetition and by training. And that reliable cognitive process, we're going to call it acceptable, an acceptable condition to produce knowledge. What do you think about this one?
So I'll just go ahead and jump into it head first. So I've heard that actually, if you know that personality King Crocoduck on YouTube used
The what?
that.
Sorry,
King Crocoduck.
I'm not familiar with that.
So he's a YouTuber. He's a fairly famous. Like he talks about science a lot, and he used that reliabilist I think justification to say something like along the lines that pretty much every organism that survives does some sort of science because it's trial and error, it's reproducible, reproducible results, and it is a methodology that is the evolution kind of pushes the organism to develop in order to continue survival. So everything that is alive right now does some sort of science in order to survive.
We do. But if this is the case, did we find it? Are we fine? Are we okay with this the new method of knowledge? Let's call it. This new definition
No.
says, you know what, this justification is kind of reliable. Who said no?
I did.
Yes, sir.
Because your repeated trial can be biased.
Repeated trial can be biased. We did not really call repeated bias here. Some people, I think, people who are presuming that evolution would kind of take over, which is one of those methods, right? This is where the repetition comes in. But the actual definition, what does it say very clearly? It just says a reliable cognitive process. You reject repetition, fine. Let's accept something else. Find a reliable cognitive process, logic, the scientific method, whatever. Find it for me. And once you found it, then we can adopt it, and then we are fine. Do you have a problem with this one?
Yes. I think
Go ahead.
what we think is knowledge is limited by our own limitations of the ontology. So I don't think that we can ever know what we know is true, because it's only until we have a counter experience that makes our knowledge more robust. So we might think that the earth is flat by repeated trial or accepted norm until we get an experience that is actually contrary to the commonly shared belief. So I don't think that we can ever know what is knowledge, because it's a constant evolution of what we think is like a generalizable form of experience until we experience otherwise.
So here I am trying to define knowledge, and you're telling me you cannot even have access to that definition. This is a valid position, and so you're rejecting the concept altogether. And yeah, okay. I just want you to tell me, if you're rejecting the definition altogether, what's the problem with this one particularly? So what's wrong with, okay, I have a reliable cognitive process, and I'm using that as a justification for whatever beliefs I have. What's wrong with that?
I write computer programs, and I run into cases where I thought the algorithm should work flawlessly until I find a bug. Then I realized that my list of scenarios or variations of the input was too narrow. Then I have to expand the possible set of testing cases. Then so what we think is sufficient base for reliability is only limited by our own internalist belief. So I don't think that you can never.
But
you
the
can never
scientific
prove
method
that you
does
are.
this. The scientific method says,
Yeah,
I'm going to correct every
yeah,
time, so that there's no problem there.
no, because you could be looking at the wrong direction. So, for example, in the absence of, I mean, I cannot come up with a good example, but I don't think that you can ever prove that you are not an internalist.
Okay, that's a wild take. I'm secretly with you, but I don't want to reveal this yet. I do have that discussion with John sometimes, and I do believe that internalist camp, there's something going on there that most people are not comfortable with admitting, and I'm not comfortable admitting as well, because this leads to complete chaos and mayhem. But we're trying to limit that. This is what we're trying to do. Anyone else with objections to this definition? Accepting a reliable cognitive process?
Well, not an objection at all, but I wanted to just say, I mean, I think maybe you'll get to this, but it seems to me the fact that there are reliable methods gets at kind of my fundamental faith that there is an objective reality. Objective reality stands behind
I hear you.
reliability.
I hear you. This is very valid. But let's say that the people in this room will agree that objective reality is the case. We all have access to it, and we can know it. These other objections are very serious, but let's all assume that we don't have them. There's even one more bigger problem than all of this in this definition, and we've already seen it. Here's the clue. We've already seen what the problem with this is. Any guesses? How about we try to apply the Gettier case to this example, to this definition? Does it pass? The Gettier case, one of them, the other case, let's say, it's even clearer without invoking the coins in the pocket or whatever. The case where you are walking in the desert and then you see a mirage. Okay. When I say I'm justified to believe, yes, sorry. Okay, just one moment, and then you. So if you say, oh, I'm justified in believing that there's water here, the justification method, the reliable cognitive method you're using, are your eyes and your perception. This is, if you want to define reliability, even scientifically speaking, this is accepted. This is the most reliable thing you can use. This is the only reliable thing you can use. What are you talking about? When you say I read, when we talked about data like an hour ago, and we said, oh, the meter says 3. How did you know that exactly? Oh, by using your eyes. So now it's accepted? So if you want to question the reliability of that man using his eyes, there's no room. We have to accept that these senses are most of the time reliable. Sometimes they miss, yes, okay, but if you want to define reliability, you have to start there. Right? I don't think there is a definition of reliability that can exclude all our senses. I don't see how it works.
But
and
I think the point is that if you're walking in the desert and if you do that regularly, you know that there are mirages, and so you might say, "Oh boy, that might be a mirage." On the other hand,
you're using your past beliefs now. Hold on a second. You come with packages.
But I mean, the point is that it is a reliable thing, it is a reliable aspect of nature that when you're walking in the desert, there can be mirages. So you have to kind of fold that in to your assessment of what you're seeing, and then figure out whether does it just kind of look like blue, or am I seeing palm trees around something? Maybe it's a mirage in a sense. I mean, mirages are not images of water, right? They really are distinguishable. And so, I mean, I think it's not at least that one thing is not really a good case for several reasons that really do have to do with the fact that it's not reliable to say that just because you think you see water in the desert, there's water.
But John, this is, I think, that points with one of the issues with sorry, I can't pronounce this word like that. Anyway, whether it's reliable or not. So first, I mean, it still struggles with the idea of like epistemic luck, which is what Gettier is pointing to. Right? Maybe we were just lucky, like this time around we were just lucky and it was reproduced. So we have to go operate under understanding that at any point we might run out of luck. And secondly, is what kind of mechanisms and criteria would we assign to being something that is desirable in terms of reliability? What do we mean by saying something is better or producing better results or more reliable results. So I think there are issues in terms of application, as well as like the fundamental. It doesn't resolve the fundamental issue of JTB, the justified true belief. I mean, that's how I see it, at least.
I agree. I don't think it does. And there's another even bigger problem with this. If you see it on slide 18 with me, which is the idea that this reliability business is very difficultly defined as reliability by me. What you really want is reliability for most people. And then you will infer that it is also reliable to you. Because if you are cheated, let's say in the case of you are in the desert, or you are under the illusion, someone tricked you, we will see a video now, or you are, let's say, under the influence of some substances, you don't want to be the one in charge. And you can always be in such a situation. So you want a method that you trust more than you trust your own judgment. This is what you really want. And this is a fun thing where when I'm not sure if you have that experience. I have that experience sometimes when I'm dreaming, and then in the dream the laws of physics get broken, and then I understand, oh, I'm dreaming now 100%. And it turns into a very fun dream for 10 seconds because I realize that I'm dreaming, and then I can do whatever I want. But I'm using that theory that I know to guide my perception and my quote-unquote knowledge. Because if the method is under my control, what good does it do to me? And in a situation where I'm under some illusion, it will not help me at all to be in control. I want the method to be in control for me so that it does the job. It is a good time now if you want to switch to the Jitsi. If you don't want to switch to the Jitsi, I have a link for the video here. You can click on it if you are on the PowerPoint, on the slides, I mean. It is a trick. It's a magic trick that people have. There's a magician that he had done it for Netflix a couple of years ago, and it's quite entertaining. So we will play the video in a moment. I'm going to wait for everybody to join, just to deal with this idea of consensus. All right. Were we all able to listen to the video?
That was amazing.
This is great. I have to admit, when I saw this first, I laughed so hard. But this highlights the trickiness of relying on the consensus, and for our audience here specifically, and one example of those is scientific consensus. Because in our example that we've seen here in the video, people were they had let's say interest in covering the truth. They were all collaborating in lying. This is not a necessary condition. Sometimes, most of the time, a huge number of people will do this because of ignorance. So they will collaborate to create consensus on something unknowingly that it's not true. But they will create that consensus. And this is the story of every scientist, every hero, every person who went against the consensus, or what Thomas Kuhn famously called the paradigm, right? This is the problem with relying on the consensus. You can never know when this consensus is well founded. So if you remember in the previous slide, we had this condition that it has to be a reliable cognitive process. Well, we were relying on a bunch of people to establish that, and it turns out that the worst thing you can do is rely on a bunch of people. Well, not the worst thing you can do, but there are huge problems with doing so blindly. And not allowing for singular voices to be heard, to check again, or to kind of quote unquote rebel against this paradigm. We're going to talk about the scientific revolution first. I want to hear your thoughts on this issue.
Well, my
Benjamin, I want to, yes, go ahead.
Points. You're stealing all my talking points. I'm not going to have.
Am I though? I'm just learning from the master. I'm just learning from you, Benjamin. That's what I'm doing.
How much longer are you going to continue? Because I'm going to run out of topics if you keep doing this.
Well, hopefully, I'm going to leave the corner of quantum mechanics and Bell's theorem. That
Wait a minute.
you will always have.
Did I hear Benjamin just say that you might leave him speechless?
I
Well,
kind of,
he's
maybe.
making all of my points for me. What is he going to leave me left? What am I going to be left with after another 2 hours of this?
Well, to be fair, I'm not really talking about that. I'm just saying consensus has problems. I'm not saying consensus in the case of quantum mechanics and Bell's theorem was a mistake. I did not say that. Now, it could be, and I don't think anybody would disagree with this. There's always a possibility that it is. The probability of it exactly is the discussion between you and John. And this is not somewhere I want to be squeezed in. I'm just doing the philosophy of knowledge thingy. Anything else before I'm running out of time here? I'm gonna cover the rest of it quickly. Anything else before we go through that? I have two more options on slide 19 and 20. I'm not gonna really talk about them. You're more than free now. You get the rhythm of what we'll do. So there's something called the causal theory of knowledge, in which case what they do is they include the cause of knowledge instead of justification in a method. They say, oh, we know that P. So knowledge comes first here, and the fact that P is the case will cause my belief in P. So knowledge comes first here. There's also a problem in this one, left as an exercise for the listener. And the last one I included, there are more, by the way. The last kind of fix I included is the fix that gets rid of epistemic luck. So it keeps the initial tripartite on slide 20. P is true. S believes that P. S believes that P is caused by the fact that P. And number 4, S believes it's not true merely by luck. So, by the way, there's a typo here in this slide. This is not the case. So here S is justified. It's the original one. S is justified. The original tripartite of Plato, right? And number 4, S's belief is not true merely by luck. So they believe that by doing this, you eliminate all the Gettier cases, because luck was the initial problem there. Also, an exercise for the reader to identify, you get the rhythm of it now, where the problem is. I've reached the end of today's presentation. We spoke about skepticism. Our brains may fool us. We spoke about the difference between data and information and knowledge. We spoke about the main proposition, which is the justify the true belief. We spoke about Gettier cases, and we spoke about a couple of fixes, one of which is the consensus, another one of which is getting rid of luck, another one of which is finding a reliable method to believe, and so on and so forth. So this was the topic for today. I hope you've enjoyed. The floor is now open for any other discussions, any questions about this. Please feel free to open the mic and speak.
So when you talk about the getting rid of epistemic luck, is that the true defeater argument, where there's like the accessibility of reliable data that will defeat the unjustified portion of it?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I understand. Can you kind of say it again?
So so it's like basically saying that we're not even we shouldn't even look at the Gettier's examples, because what he's doing, he's basically covering up the real bit of data that will provide like her or him, whichever example we're looking at, with justification to have that true belief. So we just need to go look into it deeper, basically saying, and once we get to the bottom of it, only then we can call it a justified true belief.
Well,
So
here's the main problem. Maybe you've identified it, but let me try to state it a little bit differently, and then tell me if you agree or not. The main problem here, one of the big problems actually, is this condition 4 that we've added is a little bit vague. Forget about that it entails number 1 and 2. So when you say a belief, you've implied number 2, and then you say it's not true merely by luck, you've implied that it is true by something else. And so let's forget about that. The problem is when you say it's not true merely by luck, what is the method that you've used here to know that? We're trying to define knowledge, and we're trying to define what a proper justification is. But then you say it's not true only by luck. What is luck really? What is the limit of luck? Sometimes you can get lucky and it still counts as knowledge, and sometimes luck is kind of necessary. Imagine you're a very, very unlucky scientist. yeah, you're going to have a hard time doing these complicated experiments where you get errors all over the place. Like a very unlucky scientist would never get things, sorted in a certain way that you would produce knowledge out of them. Besides, you would not know what luck has done and what actual mechanism has done. I say actual, what I mean the physical universe, and its processes. Until you do the experiment several times, and then you can tell. And sometimes you can tell. Sometimes I claim you can never tell. You can only reduce it to a significant sort of small error margin. You can say, so below this error margin, I will call it significant. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah,
Does that connect?
no, absolutely, because I mean, it requires some sort of omniscience. Like when you
Yeah,
know
something
things
like that.
100%, and that's, I think, I see the problem in the radical itself, because it sets up the standards and goals that are just simply unachievable. So what's the point of trying to achieve them? And it dismisses everything on its grounds, which is also not very useful, because then like you end up with some sort of epistemic nihilism, saying like, well, you cannot know everything if you don't know everything, and that's not very useful at all.
Shamash, in the case of the Oasis, I mean, that is something where it was just luck, right? I mean, that wasn't a reliably justified example, right? Because the thing that he
No.
saw was not an image of the actual water; it was a mirage, right? He was lucky that there was actually water nearby. So certainly we can dismiss that
Yeah,
example as a
absolutely.
counter. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
That's what this kind of without luck approach tries to do. It says, oh, if your claim about knowledge, which is justified through belief, turns out to be caused by luck, or turns out that it's valid by luck under this
Well,
definition,
I
then
only
get rid
brought
of
it
it.
up because I thought you were suggesting that it was thorny in the situation where we turn to reliable true belief, because it's certainly, I mean, you might say it's reliable in the sense that he saw it, but there didn't have to be any water there. He was lucky that there actually was water there, because it didn't have to be.
Oh, he wasn't in contact with it in any shape or form. Yeah, that's absolutely true. But here's the thing: sometimes the real water can cause that fake water. You know what I mean? Like if you say, oh, you have to have contact with it, you cannot just get. So the actual truth has to influence this wrong thing that caused you to believe it. Okay. Then you can still pass using the dune and the mirage example, because sometimes the actual true water can cause the appearance of the fake water, and then the mirage, I mean,
Yeah.
and then
See, I mean,
and then it also fails the condition because it is responsible causally for it.
sorry. No, but I was just thinking, I mean, I think it's really not the case that fake water causes a mirage. I mean, that real water causes a mirage. Um, I mean, if you see the water and it really is the water you're seeing, then this is, you know, how do I want to say this? I mean, the point is that um,
I mean the
if
presence
you
of the water
see,
somewhere. You know what I mean?
yeah, but it's
Sometimes you
not.
think that there's water somewhere, and sometimes there's a pond, but then the location is changed because of the atmosphere and all that stuff.
Well, but I mean, you might say that, but I think actually it'd be hard pressed to give me an example of that ever happening. I mean,
I've
that's
never
kind
been
of
to
what
the
I'm
desert.
getting
I
at.
have no idea.
Yeah, I don't think that really happens. You may, I mean, every time you look at something, it's displaced a little bit by atmospheric refraction, but that's a very different thing. The example really relies on what would be called a mirage, and mirages don't make an oasis over the hill appear on this side of the hill. That's just a mirage.
Yeah. True. Yeah, the way it was. Yeah, we need to slightly modify it so that it makes more sense. Absolutely. That's not the point, though. The real point is, did we get the definition right? Was this was this attempt a successful one? And it clearly wasn't.
I do really, really, really like the insistence that you can't know something that isn't true, because I say that all the time. Um, I think that's really important because we make that mistake. I'd use the example. The newspapers are all the time telling us what the newspapers, which deal in stuff you can know. They deal with facts, right? They're supposed to deal with facts. Report that Donald Trump believes this or that, when they can't possibly know what Donald Trump believes. And they'll usually say something that he believes that I'm pretty sure he doesn't believe, because they'll say it because he says he believes it. And that's what they should say. They should say Donald Trump says he believes or claims to believe. And I think that's really important. Newspapers especially should not be in the business of reporting things that they can't possibly know.
But then they won't make any money.
So I'd like to segue from John's observation and direct it towards Ben's questioning or wondering what the utility of this kind of a discussion is. And I would argue that in some ways, this philosophical question of what is knowledge is possibly even existentially one of the most important philosophical questions, because it bears directly on what is disinformation, misinformation, and how we as masses of humans respond and what kind of decisions we make collectively.
I wholeheartedly agree. If I may report on personal experience, learning about all of these things that I'm trying to present here today really helped my social skills on a personal level with friends and family. I became a lot more careful about what I say and how I phrase it. And I became also better at asking people questions and clarifications for when they say things. Because I know how much details can be lost, and because I know that the meanings of the words we use, even though we have dictionaries, the dictionary uses other words to define the word we're looking for. And so this kind of circularity is very difficult to untangle, especially when you are having a discussion when some heated words have been exchanged, or you are not in a very clear, a very calm state where you can take it. So yeah, I hope that this helps other people like it did to me. This is the reason why we started doing these rooms.
Another thing that I think that often impinges on the same territory for me is the whole question of belief and agnosticism, theism, atheism, etc. And I've come to believe pretty strongly that the only defensible position is agnosticism. Whether you believe really strongly in the existence of a God or you believe really strongly that there is no God, the only defensible position is to be agnostic, which is to mean to embrace the idea that you can't possibly know whether there's a God.
Yeah, that's one more distinction that can be directly drawn from our conversation. So how sure are you of something? And if you are sure absolutely, what do you say? And if you are sure absolutely, how do you do it? So for faith thing, if I ask you, is there a God? And you answer me, I don't know, I can ask you a slightly different question. I can say, do you believe there's a God? In which case,
Exactly.
Yeah, in which case you have to tell me yes or no. You cannot escape by saying, oh, none of us knows, because in reality, by definition of God, even when the believers kind of preach it, you cannot be in contact with God via something that is scientifically verifiable. This is by construction of the whole idea itself. And they claim that this is due to this nature of free will and test that God wants us to go through. So if you can have access to a foolproof, 100% reliable the evidence, right, then everyone will be a believer, and then the game will be over. So we need that testing. This is what they say. At least the major three religions on the planet. I say the major three. I should say the Abrahamic major three. The others, the major one, Buddhism, the other Confucianism, Hinduism. They have different conceptions altogether. So yeah, if I ask you about your beliefs, then I'm expecting a clear answer of yes or no, because what we understand belief to be, unlike knowledge, it has to be conscious. You cannot have unconscious or subconscious beliefs, but probably having unconscious or tacit knowledge somewhere is a lot easier to obtain.
And again, to continue riding this hobby horse of the existential value of these discussions, I initially was thinking in terms of disinformation, misinformation, and how we collectively as a species deal with our responsibility in terms of things like global warming or pandemics or ecological damages. But insofar as a lot of the conflicts between groups of people are by virtue of their hard-held beliefs that their God is the only God, causes a tremendous amount of suffering, and again, that is an existential consequence of coming to a clearer collective understanding of what is knowledge, what is belief, and what is the distinction.
I've been thinking about what you said earlier, the concept of an unlucky scientist. I think that would be like a good fictional character, some tragic figure.
Right?
And I was thinking it would be funny, and then I thought, no, it would be tragic actually. Poor guy, like that, like talk about replication crisis.
I think Sheldon Cooper is a nice interpretation of this. Like all the clumsiness that happens with them, etc. in the show.
Well, it dawned on me that the opposite is definitely in fiction, though. Like the lucky or extra lucky scientist, or like the stories like Pink Panther or like Mr. Bean are examples of guys who like stumble onto the truth constantly, not necessarily because of their own skill. But the opposite would be more of a sad story.
No, I think that the lucky scientist is also a tragedy because he does experiments, and the experiments get results that are favorable for him, whatever that means.
Well, here's a question that just occurs to me. And this is just semantics at some level, because I really do like the whole knowing something to be, to have a really, really high standard of proof. But I'm kind of willing to let people, quote, be sure, unquote, of things that aren't true. I think it's kind of possible to be sure of things that aren't true, even though I don't think you can know things that aren't true.
You can be sure of things that are not facts.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then you would be wrong to be sure of them, no?
Well, that's right. You would. But see, I don't think you can, when you say that you know something that isn't true, I mean, you're wrong, of course, in saying that. Because it's not true. But I think I think that I could make a case for somebody legitimately being sure of something that isn't true. Because and it has to do with it being an internal state rather than an external in some sense.
There you go.
To say that when
totally.
something is true, you're saying something about reality, right? That it's not just you. You can be sure of something, and you might then even go on and claim that you know it. But I think it's okay to say that you're sure of it. Not okay to say that you know it. Or I don't know. There's a difference between being sure of something, and it is the internal versus external, I think.
So I would like to challenge John's position a little bit more by saying I don't think that people know what they believe. Even when they claim to believe a thing, I don't know that they know what they believe. So
I'm with you on that one.
When people say what they believe, I think there's still a gap. I think if you want to know what people believe, you should watch their behavior and ignore their mouth.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that.
I don't even agree with that one. No. Just take it to maximum sensitivity. I don't think that every belief can be explicitly stated, and it has entailments on your behavior. You can have wrong beliefs that are very vague in your head. Let me rephrase, actually. My actual position is most of our beliefs are very vague until we have discussions like that about them. This process of rationalization, probably this is where Wissam knows a lot more about this than I am. Because from a physiological and psychological point of view, how is it that talking about something makes that thing explicit And then did it exist before, and then it was made explicit? Or does it form as you talk about it and as you listen, and you kind of shape it in the middle of the discussion? And then you have the illusion that it was this form already from the beginning. You just needed someone to ask you, to prompt you into forming it. Most of our beliefs, I think, are very malleable in that manner. Whenever we are in the discussion, we kind of summon some basic attitude, and that basic attitude to things formulates itself as a relevant idea to the discussion. That's my experience of it, but I don't know the theory if there's any research done on this.
So I would claim, I would ask people to consider that the primary role that belief statements serve in society is manipulative. Specifically, we want people to like us, agree with us, and cooperate with us. And so we tell them that we believe the things that they tell us they believe. And this is a bit of a handshake. And it's arbitrary. It doesn't matter what it is. If we could believe in
But
Zeus,
you do the opposite,
and
Benjamin.
I believe in Zeus, and
you tell people that you don't believe in what they believe. You
well,
yourself.
that's right,
you do
because
the opposite.
I'm not manipulative. That's because I'm not manipulative.
I don't think it's about manipulation.
I'm
I think
interested in what's true.
according to your definition, it promotes survivability, and so that I would not call it any bad name, let alone manipulation.
In my experience,
I wasn't calling it a bad name. I just said it's manipulative.
Yeah, manipulation. I don't want manipulation to be something. Well, okay, let's leave ethics aside. So you're happy with this social manipulation, and you agree that it promotes survivability, but then at the same time you refuse to do it. There's more to this story. There's a silver lining. I think the same thing that drives people to agree would drive them to disagree, which is to seem intelligent and to seem valuable. And sometimes when you disagree, you also want to show that you have much more to offer. And you can you can make also the claim that this promotes survivability if you want to go down that road. So always agreeing doesn't really cut it. If you have a very agreeable person, you don't want to hang out with them. You want someone who agrees with you most of the time, but then some of the time tells you something else, so that there is this back and forth between the two. And then you can trust what they say. And if you want to go back to survivability, I think this is ultimate. Having someone who always follows you is useless. What are they going to help you with? Nothing. They just follow you and then eat from your resources. You don't really want that. Well, gentlemen, we have reached, I think, the point where I play you out. Again, thank you all so very much for being here. I'm really sorry about the technical difficulties. Thank you for being here. I thank all my dear friends. Thank you all. And the next time, I'm not sure how I'm going to entitle it. Next time will be something around the theory of science itself, something that has to do with the assumptions that we make when we want to do science. So let's call it the assumptions of scientific theory until I come up with a better name. Hopefully this will be the case. Thank you very much again. See you next Wednesday. Give John a follow. Join our house and look at the links in the description once I paste them in a moment. Thank you so very much, and see you next time. Bye-bye.